Welcome to the Secret History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Omagh, Northern Ireland, moments before an explosive device hidden in a red car detonated in the town center in 1998. Anita Ekberg poses for a studio portrait in Stockholm, Sweden in 1950. This session preceded her move to Hollywood and showcased her striking and elegant style. A Chernobyl liquidator pushes a cart carrying an abandoned baby in a deserted village near the plant in 1986. While measuring radiation levels with a Geiger counter, he moves along empty streets and damaged houses after the incident. A blimp collided after being subjected to the effects of an atomic detonation during tests in the Nevada desert in 1957. The shockwave tore the gas envelope, causing loss of lift and immediate descent of the balloon. Joseph Goebbels, a high-ranking official of the German regime, poses alongside members of the Catholic clergy during an official ceremony in Germany in the mid-1930s. They perform the official military salute of the authoritarian government. The leader of the German authoritarian regime visits Napoleon's tomb at Les Invalides in Paris in June 1940. The ceremony took place after France's occupation and aimed to reinforce symbolic ties with past empires. U.S. Marine Corps Sergeant Frank Prater feeds a kitten that lost its mother in an improvised shelter during the Korean War in 1952. Viet Minh soldiers celebrate their victory after capturing and dismantling a French stronghold, with the burning ruins of the old fort rising in the background. The first wave of United States Navy landing craft advanced toward the beaches of Iwo Jima on February 19, 1945, at 8:59 a.m. during the Pacific Campaign of the Second World War. Buffalo Calf Road Woman, a Lakota warrior, took part in the Battle of Little Bighorn near the Little Bighorn River in Montana on June 25, 1876, helping to defeat the United States Army troops led by Colonel George Custer. A desperate man holds a sign on a street in the United States in 1930, at the height of the Great Depression, urgently asking for a strong rope to relieve his suffering and offering unfurnished lodging for himself and his family as an alternative. Children rest at the Madonna House Nursery in New York City during the summer of 1941, seeking relief from the urban heat. The facility was located in a north-facing wing with large windows that allowed cool breezes and potted plants to help lower the temperature. People tried to stop Catherine Switzer from finishing the Boston Marathon in 1967. During the race in April, she was physically confronted by an official but continued running alongside her support team. Children worked in coal mines in Pennsylvania in 1911, extracting fuel for steam locomotives. They moved through narrow tunnels and endured heat, dust, and very little natural light. A Vietnamese family flees to Saigon during the armed conflict in June 1972, after intense fighting in the Mekong Delta region. Indigenous children were taken to a residential boarding school in Canada between 1930 and 1950 and took part in collective prayer sessions as part of their daily routine. A white plainclothes police officer enters the pool at the Monson Motor Lodge in St. Augustine, Florida on June 18, 1964. To arrest a group of white and African American people taking part in an integration protest in a segregated area. Anna Bissell became Chief Executive Officer of the Bissell Carpet Sweeper Company in 1889, leading the family business that manufactured carpet sweepers in the United States. Jeremy Corbyn took part in a peaceful protest against racial segregation in London in 1994, gathering activists in front of the South African embassy. Swedish soldiers serving under the United Nations flag interrogated a Katangese sniper found hidden in a tree near Kolwezi in the Congo in 1961. De Beers workers underwent X-ray examinations at the end of each shift before leaving the diamond mines in Kimberley, South Africa in 1954. British soldiers were freed from a Japanese detention camp in Singapore in August 1945. A massive column of captured German soldiers marched along the Autobahn near Remagen in mid-1945, while U.S. Army tanks and Allied armored vehicles escorted the group. Theodore Roosevelt poses for a colorized photograph in 1904 in the Oval Office of the White House in Washington, D.C., while serving as the 26th President of the United States. An American soldier in Okinawa, Japan, hears the news of Germany's surrender on May 8, 1945, ending years of conflict in Europe. General Dwight D. Eisenhower briefs the airborne troops at an airfield in southern England in June 1944, preparing for the operation scheduled for June 6 with the Allied landing in Normandy. Pro-choice demonstrators marched down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. on January 22, 1977. The event brought together about 20,000 people demanding safe access to reproductive health services. Soviet and American soldiers pose alongside artillery shells marked with messages to enemy forces at an airbase near the Eastern Front on June 2, 1944. Death masks were made in Europe and the United States between 1900 and 1930 to preserve the faces of recently deceased individuals. Artists applied plaster over the face to create detailed molds that captured individual features and served as keepsakes. The brave female pilots of the Soviet Air Force's 588th Night Bomber Regiment, known as the Night Witches, carried out bombing missions against enemy troops in the Leningrad region between June 1942 and May 1945. Albina Mali-Hocevar was photographed in Trieste, Italy in May 1945 after participating in the resistance in Yugoslavia between 1941 and 1945. She suffered 3 wounds fighting occupying forces and received care from comrades in rear area camps. Children consumed about 17 fluid ounces of nutritious porridge daily in The Hague, Netherlands, during the severe winter food shortages of 1944-1945, receiving supplies from the Interdenominational Bureau of Food Aid and Child Evacuation. A boy sitting on the shoulders of a participant dressed as Krampus takes part in a parade in Mitterndorf, Austria on December 6, 1949, during the St. Nicholas festivities. Fred Rogers presents a private performance at the bedside of Beth Usher at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland, in February 1987, while she was recovering from surgery to treat Rasmussen's encephalitis. Activists marched in protest against mandatory bra wearing in San Francisco on August 1, 1969, gathering about 40 participants in Union Square and holding signs with slogans about freedom of choice. The Cincinnati and Hamilton County Public Library was completed around 1874 in the heart of Cincinnati, Ohio, and opened to provide free access to knowledge. Passengers wait to board at the Greyhound station in Manhattan, New York City in 1936. This station served as a departure point for long-distance trips between cities in the eastern United States. A family watches in their living room in Moscow as the resignation of Mikhail Gorbachev as President of the Soviet Union is broadcast on December 25, 1991. The speech, delivered at the Kremlin, marked the end of the USSR after nearly 70 years of existence. A Northumberland coal miner shares the evening meal with his wife in a small kitchen in 1937. He sits at the table still with coal dust on his face after a long shift in the mines, which formed the backbone of the local economy. Irma Grese, nicknamed the Beautiful Beast, poses next to Joseph Kramer, who headed the detention centers at Auschwitz and later at Bergen-Belsen, in a 1945 photograph. Wyatt Earp, at age 75, poses for a portrait in Los Angeles in 1923. He was the legendary former lawman of the Old West who served in Tombstone and took part in the gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881. The Tucker Snowcat tracked vehicle was photographed hovering over an ice crevasse in the Transantarctic Mountains during the 1954 Antarctic expedition led by Vivian Fuchs. A Red Cross train departed from Budapest, Hungary, in March 1947, bound for Switzerland, carrying medical supplies, provisions, and people seeking reconstruction after the world conflict. Kenneth Warwick, age 14, and Frank Grell, age 17, escaped from a detention facility in Fort Dodge, Iowa, on August 8, 1945, by sawing through the bars with tools hidden by their girlfriends inside angel food cake and watermelon. Theodore Roosevelt, President of the United States, positioned himself on the 12-inch gun on the aft deck of the USS Connecticut battleship at Hampton Roads. The interior of a New York City subway car in 1910 featured wooden benches lined along narrow walls and gas lamps hanging from the ceiling. The fluted metal floor provided added stability for passengers. An ornamental arrangement of ossuaries in the Capuchin crypt in Rome, taken around 1900. A child interacts with a Krampus figure during a Christmas photo session in Vienna around 1900. Krampus is an Alpine folklore character who, according to tradition, accompanies St. Nicholas in winter celebrations. Children salute the United States flag in front of Morgan Hill School in California in the 1930s. This act symbolized the students' civic respect gathered in the schoolyard. Ella Harper was born with a unique genetic condition that caused her knees to bend backward, making her prefer to move using her hands and feet. In 1885, she gained attention in traveling shows across the United States as the Camel Girl. Mussolini's political party headquarters in Rome was adorned in 1934 with the repeated word SI and a monumental mask on the facade. The building, located in Piazza Venezia, served as a center for meetings and planning for Benito Mussolini's authoritarian regime. Protesters gather in front of the Chicago Post Office building in 1978 to oppose an extremist group planning a rally in Skokie, Illinois, supported by the American Civil Liberties Union's stance on free speech. A patient visits an itinerant dentist's office in Chicago, United States, in 1892, leaning over a wooden chair while the practitioner performs procedures without anesthesia. Marseille residents watch as French Army battle flags are loaded for shipment to Africa after the German occupation of France in 1940. Katharina Detzel, a patient in a psychiatric hospital in Germany, built a straw figure on her own as part of therapeutic activities. The structure was made of hay, ropes, and improvised fabric, showcasing her craft skills and creative spirit. Hattie the Mad Hatter Matters was awarded the title of Britain's Most Astonishing Woman in 1883. The studio photograph shows her in a period dress and boxing gloves, displaying a confident posture and determined expression. Men inflated ox hides to create improvised boats and crossed the Sutlej River in Punjab, India in 1908. These rudimentary boats were sealed with wax and tied with ropes made from local fibers to ensure buoyancy and durability. The Jersey Beast mask is made of thick leather with eye slits and adjustable straps to conceal the attacker's identity. Edward Paisnell, accused of assaulting women and children between 1957 and 1968 on Jersey, wore this disguise during home invasions. Anne Frank poses in front of Opekta, her father's pectin company on the Singel in Amsterdam, in 1935. The company produced fruit preservatives used in bakeries and homes and exported its products to various European countries. Albert Einstein taught physics to students at Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, in May 1946. He conducted lectures on relativity and quantum mechanics using blackboards and hands-on demonstrations tailored to undergraduate level. A teenager water skis on Spirit Lake in Washington on May 18, 1980, as Mount St. Helens erupts in the background. On board the U.S. Navy cruiser Brooklyn, docked in the New York harbor, the lower quarters used by the sailors are revealed in 1897. Workers constructed the Manhattan Bridge over the East River in New York City in 1908, erecting steel towers over 328 feet tall to support the cables that connect Manhattan to Brooklyn. A sign in Williamson County, Illinois, in October 1975 warns residents about an escapee from the Marion Federal Penitentiary. The Reichstag building in Berlin in May 1945, after heavy fighting. The partially destroyed walls and exposed metal framework reveal the extent of the damage suffered during the final offensive. A forklift operator arranges pallets of polio vaccine in a warehouse in Indianapolis, Indiana, in April 1955. A war veteran sells matchsticks on the high street of Canterbury, Kent, England, in 1930. He wears a simple coat and hat, carrying a box with dozens of matches to offer passers-by. A father and son become emotional as they say goodbye to relatives boarding a ship bound for Buenos Aires in search of a better life. A prototype of the Atlantic snow cruiser, a vehicle designed for Antarctic exploration, traveled the streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1939. The Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico was photographed in 1974 during its activities as a secret nuclear research center associated with the United States Department of Energy. Stephen Hawking and Jane Hawking pose in front of St. Mary the Great Chapel in Cambridge on July 14, 1965, on their wedding day. Bears rode motorized scooters during a Circus Schumann performance at the Kirkesbygningen in Copenhagen in the late 1950s. In a wrestling gym in Paris, France in 1974, a boy opens his mouth in surprise upon seeing Andrei Roussimoff, the giant wrestler standing over 6 feet 7 inches tall and weighing an impressive 529 pounds. Marilyn Monroe poses at the Milk Fund headquarters in Los Angeles in October 1957, taking part in a volunteer event to collect milk and nutritious food for children from struggling families. A French woman warmly welcomes an American soldier in Strasbourg 2 days after the city's liberation on November 22, 1944. A local uses a soda vending machine in Tashkent, Soviet Uzbekistan, in 1959. The machine accepted metal tokens to dispense cold beverages in glass bottles at plazas and transit stations. Customers wait to be served at Woolworths in downtown Houston, Texas, in 1964. The department store offered household goods, clothing, and treats displayed on shelves, while clerks recorded sales on mechanical cash registers. People ride in Victorian-style roller coaster cars at Coney Island, New York, around 1900. Former Emperor William II poses behind members of the German authoritarian regime's military forces in Doorn, the Netherlands, in May 1940. The scene took place shortly after advancing armies occupied the country during the European conflict. Notre Dame Cathedral was photographed in Paris by Roger Violet around 1900. The Gothic structure, begun in the 12th century and completed in the 14th century, underwent 19th century restorations led by Eugène Viollet-le-Duc and became famous for its stained glass windows and gargoyles. Hedy Lamarr poses in a Hollywood studio in 1943 during the Second World War, wearing an elegant satin dress that highlights her talent as both actress and inventor. John Fitzgerald Kennedy holds up a bowl with a salamander alongside young Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. in the gardens of the National Botanical Garden in Washington, D.C. on March 11, 1961. The Mona Lisa was returned to the Louvre Museum in Paris on January 10, 1914, after being stolen on August 21, 1911, by an art student who concealed the painting in an apartment. Workers erect the Eiffel Tower on the Champ de Mars in Paris in 1888, during the assembly process that began in January 1887 and was completed for the 1889 Universal Exposition. A Japanese samurai poses in a combat stance on a training ground on the outskirts of Edo, now Tokyo, around 1865. He wears lamellar armor and a kabuto helmet, wielding a katana and demonstrating defense techniques passed down by tradition. A flapper woman gets a thigh tattoo in a Chicago studio around mid-1925. The procedure was done with handheld needles and vegetable-based ink, resulting in designs that expressed boldness and personal style. A spiral staircase designed by Leonardo da Vinci in 1516 was erected at the Ambrosiana Library in Milan, Italy. This structure saved space and incorporated self-balancing mechanisms that allowed ascent without a handrail. A woman enjoys a hamburger at the first McDonald's in Moscow in 1990. The restaurant opened on January 31, 1990 in Pushkin Square, symbolizing the arrival of a global fast food chain in the Soviet Union. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.